My parents raised their glasses to toast Ethan's latest deal, to our brilliant son always making us proud. Dad beamed. Then Mom's eyes found me. "Anna, when will you ever measure up?" The table burst into laughter when Ethan leaned back and added, "Maybe in 50 years. I smiled, but inside my chest burned. None of them knew the truth that Ethan's empire had survived only because of me. One secret, one silent choice had kept him standing. And if I ever spoke it aloud, the golden child they worshipped would crumble before their eyes. Columbus, Ohio always felt small when I was growing up, but our house was its own universe. 2 stories beige, siding a backyard where dandelions grew faster than Dad's patience. Mom was a high school English teacher, Dad a retired lawyer who treated dinner like a courtroom ruling from the head of the table. In that little world, Ethan and I were once inseparable. He was 4 years older, my partner in crime. We'd ride bikes down cracked sidewalks inventing superhero names. He was Speedy. I was Design Dynamo. He'd sneak into my room at night, begging me to sketch him a fortress or a flying car. Back then, he was my fiercest defender. When girls at school mocked my notebook full of furniture sketches, Ethan snapped, "You're just jealous she's going to be famous one day." I believed him. I believed we'd always be on the same team. But somewhere between scraped knees and adulthood, the script flipped. By college, Ethan stopped asking about my designs. He'd roll his eyes when I showed him a new sketch, muttering, "Cute Anna, but real money doesn't come from doodles." When his startup began to take off, his voice changed, louder, sharper, a tone that filled rooms. Mine stayed quieter, measured. Still, for a while, we built something together. Long nights in our cramped apartment, ramen on the counter, laptops glowing. I coded pitch to investors, pored over spreadsheets until my eyes ached. Ethan handled branding, sleek logos, flashy Instagram posts, selfies with captions like, "Building the future." We were supposed to be partners. But when the app caught fire with thousands of downloads and real money rolling in the spotlight, landed squarely on him. It was subtle at first. A caption here, a handshake photo there, built this from the ground up. He never corrected the narrative. When colleagues thanked him for features I'd written line by line at 3 a.m., he just nodded, letting the praise stick. I told myself not to care. That family meant sharing wins even if my name wasn't on them. But every time Dad clinked a glass to Ethan's vision while I was reduced to the helper, the sidekick, the one who kept the books, something inside me cracked a little deeper. Holidays became unbearable. Ethan arrived with headlines and swagger. I arrived with contributions no one saw. Mom would brag Ethan's company just landed a huge contract. Dad would add, "That boy has vision." Then their eyes would turn to me. Polite smiles, soft pity. "Still working on your projects, Anna. Still figuring things out." Figuring things out, that was their phrase for me. But they didn't know. They didn't know the nights I stayed up coding until dawn. They didn't know the contracts I secured, the funding I fought for the quiet empire I was slowly building outside their view. And maybe I let it happen. Maybe I stayed silent because silence was safer than the fight. Until that birthday. Until their laughter. Until Ethan's smirk echoed the same words I'd heard my whole life behind smaller less. But they were wrong. I wasn't behind. I was simply out of sight building something they couldn't imagine. And one day, they were going to see it. The breaking point didn't come with fireworks. There was no screaming match, no slammed doors. It came quietly like a hairline fracture spreading through glass until suddenly the whole window gives way. It was the year I realized I couldn't sit at the family table anymore. Thanksgiving invitations had always arrived with unspoken instructions. Bring a dish. Bring your smile. Bring proof you're still running behind your brother. But that year, the weight of another evening scripted around Ethan felt unbearable. So I lied. I told Mom I had deadlines investors to meet a flight I couldn't miss. She accepted the excuse too quickly, relief in her voice. Easier to believe I was busy than to ask why I didn't want to come. That night, instead of balancing dessert plates on my lap in Dad's living room, I sat cross-legged in my apartment. Takeout cartons scattered across my coffee table. A Hallmark movie flickered on mute while snow drifted down outside my window. For the first time in years, I wasn't choking on comparisons. No one asked when I'd catch up. No one measured me against Ethan's highlight reel. No one treated me like the unfinished sketch of a masterpiece they already owned. The silence was shocking, not empty, not lonely. Oxygen. For years, I'd let their narratives smother me, Ethan the visionary, Anna the helper. But in that quiet, I heard another voice, my own. And it didn't whisper failure. It asked one question. Now what? I didn't know the answer. But I knew it wouldn't come from their table. So I started small. I took freelance contracts everyone dismissed as unstable. I stacked them one by one until patchwork gigs became a steady income. I taught myself business proposals at 3 a.m., learned tax codes and social media metrics from free PDFs and YouTube tutorials. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. 6 months later, I was making more than I had at my old job. By the 10th month, I left behind the one-bedroom walk-up with peeling paint and signed the lease on a brighter apartment. And then 1 year later, I walked into a bank and signed the papers for my first real office space, a tiny windowless room with a single desk. But it had my name on the lease. No Ethan, no parents, just me. It wasn't secrecy, it was sacred. Each milestone left me both proud and bitter. Proud because I'd built it myself. Bitter because I knew that if Ethan so much as sneezed near an opportunity, my parents would hail him as a genius. Meanwhile, my victories disappeared into the void, unmentioned, unasked about. When Ethan's app stumbled, I was the one who caught it, quietly, strategically. I funneled money into his company through a shell investment, shoring up his vision with my discipline. I told myself it was about family, about keeping our shared dream alive, even if his name was the one on the magazine covers. But every time he bragged on Instagram, every time he captioned a post with, "That's how visionaries do it," I felt my stomach twist. He wasn't the visionary, he was the voice. I was the lungs. And lungs can only stay silent for so long. The breaking point wasn't one explosion. It was 1,000 paper cuts. Like the investor meeting where Ethan introduced me as the support staff. Like the dinner when Mom sighed, "At least your brother carries the company." Like the night I lay awake staring at the ceiling, replaying the words not cut out for big decisions over and over until they carved scars into my brain. I wanted to scream, to force them to see. But I stayed quiet, folding my fury into silence, until one evening, sitting in that tiny office with the hum of fluorescent lights above me, I realized something. I wasn't invisible. I was underestimated. And that was power. Because underestimated people aren't watched closely. Their moves aren't predicted. Their victories aren't stolen until it's too late. That's when I made my choice. I wouldn't fight Ethan at the table where I was always outnumbered. I wouldn't beg for my parents' approval like a starving child hoping for scraps. I would build in silence until my success roared loud enough to shatter the script they'd written for me. And when the time came, I wouldn't just catch up. I'd walk past them all without ever looking back. The house looked the same every holiday. Mom's candles in perfect rows, Dad carving the turkey like a ritual, Ethan holding court with his stories of innovation. But the difference now was me. I stopped showing up as the overlooked daughter. I walked in with calm shoulders, steady eyes, and a silence that wasn't submission anymore, it was strategy. Because by then, I had already made my move. My firm was no longer just a sketch on paper. I had built a venture capital company from scratch, pouring every cent and every sleepless night into startups no one else dared to touch. While Ethan posted selfies with CEOs, I was writing term sheets at 2 a.m., negotiating contracts in coffee shops, listening to nervous 20-somethings pitch ideas they barely had words for. And I funded them. Quietly. Deliberately. One of those companies, a scrappy AI-driven fitness app, landed a $5 million deal with a national chain. Another, a sustainable e-commerce platform, doubled its valuation within a year. Each win built my portfolio brick by brick until I was sitting on millions in assets under management. But I didn't brag. I didn't post. I didn't call my parents to announce victories, because I had learned something critical. They didn't hear my words, they only heard Ethan's echo. So I stopped trying to speak their language. Instead, I built. The irony. Even as Ethan's company faltered, I was the one who saved him. When his visionary crypto feature tanked, dragging his app toward bankruptcy, investors started whispering that he was finished. His Instagram grew quieter. The arrogance never left, but the cracks began to show. And that's when I stepped in silently. Through a shell company I controlled, I funneled $2 million into his startup. I disguised it as an anonymous investment connecting him to a financial firm that was willing to gamble on him. It was enough to keep his company afloat, enough to let him stand on stage at a conference a month later, bragging about a $10 million partnership. He had no idea I was the lifeline. And maybe part of me wanted it that way. Maybe I thought it was poetic justice. His success was literally standing on my shoulders, just like it had been since the day we built that first app in our apartment. But watching him smile for cameras, talk about his solo vision, gnawed at me in ways I couldn't silence. I'd scroll through his posts late at night, my chest burning. Built this from the ground up, self-made. The comments cheered him on. Investors called him a genius. Mom printed out his interviews and pinned them on the fridge like high school report cards. And I sat in my apartment holding the proof that none of it would exist without me. That was my silent counterattack. Not revenge yet, not destruction, just the truth, sitting quietly in my files, emails, contracts, wire transfers, all showing the Golden Boy's empire was stitched together by the sister he mocked. Sometimes I imagined the reveal. I pictured connecting my laptop to a projector at one of Dad's toasts, letting the documents flash across the room until the smirk fell off Ethan's face. The silence afterward would be deafening. But I didn't, not yet, because silence was my weapon now. While Ethan shouted his story into the world, I sharpened mine in the dark. Every investment I made, every founder I backed, every contract I signed it was ammunition. Proof that when the moment came, I wouldn't just whisper my side of the story. I'd drop it like thunder. And in the meantime, I let them underestimate me. I let Dad make his jokes, let Mom sigh, let Ethan revel. Because underestimated people move unseen. And unseen, I was free to build a truth so undeniable that when it finally surfaced, it wouldn't just shake Ethan. It would break the table they had all been sitting at. My father always believed he could command a room with a raised glass. He was right until the night his ritual cracked. It was his 60th birthday, a rented hall in downtown Columbus, filled with friends, relatives, business partners. The air smelled of steak and champagne, the kind of night meant to cement his legacy as a patriarch. Ethan, of course, was the centerpiece. He arrived in a tailored suit, dripping confidence, telling anyone who'd listen about his latest deal. When dessert plates were cleared, Dad rose glass in hand. To Ethan, he announced, "Our visionary, the pride of this family." Applause rippled across the tables. Mom dabbed her eyes with a napkin glowing. Then her gaze shifted. "And Anna," she said with a tone that carried more sting than praise, "when will you ever do something worthwhile?" The room hushed just enough for Ethan's smirk to land like a dagger. He leaned back, savoring the spotlight. Probably in 50 years. Laughter erupted. My uncles slapped the table. Even some cousins chuckled nervously, but I didn't laugh. I didn't blink, because I knew something they didn't. I stood calm and deliberate and pulled out my phone. Actually, I said, my voice carrying further than I expected, "I have something to share." The projector at the front of the room flickered to life. For weeks I had debated whether to do this, whether exposing the truth would burn every bridge left. But as I looked at Ethan basking in applause for a deal I had orchestrated, my choice crystallized. The screen displayed contracts, emails, bank transfers, all showing the anonymous shell company that had saved Ethan's empire belonged to me, my firm, my name. The $10 million partnership he bragged about had been brokered by the sister he mocked. At first silence, forks hovered in midair. Ethan's grin faltered. Mom broke the stillness. This This has to be a mistake. Dad's face hardened, clinging to denial. You left his company, Anna. Why would you invest in it? I steadied my voice. Because I believed in the work. Because I didn't want to see our dream die. But make no mistake, it was my money, my firm, my strategy that kept it alive. Gasps. Whispers. A few eyes darted to Ethan, searching for his rebuttal. His jaw tightened. Jealous, he spat. You can't stand my success, so you're inventing stories. The word hit me harder than I expected, not because it was true, but because it was so familiar. I'd heard versions of it my entire life. Too sensitive, too dramatic, too small. Now jealous. I almost responded, almost fought to convince them. But then I looked around the room and saw their faces closed off, dismissive, unwilling to see beyond the golden boy they'd worshipped for decades. So I did the only thing left. I shut off the projector. The screen went black, and with it, any last illusion that I was fighting for their recognition. Enjoy your evening, I said softly, looking directly at Dad. My heels clicked against the tile as I walked out. Clara, my closest friend, followed me to the door, her expression blazing with frustration. You should have pushed harder, she whispered. I shook my head. Not here, not anymore. Because the truth wasn't for them. It was for me. The next morning in my office, I made the call that shifted everything. Pull our investment from Ethan's company, I told my strategist. Every cent. And terminate the pending contract. By noon, the paperwork was done. For years, I had been Ethan's silent safety net, the invisible hand that kept him upright. But not anymore. I would no longer cushion his arrogance, no longer bankroll the lies my family worshipped. 2 days later, Ethan's fury hit the internet. He posted a photo of himself, arms crossed, captioned, "Some people will sabotage your dreams out of jealousy. My sister tried to destroy me, but I'll rise again." He tagged me. The comments exploded. Some cheered his resilience. Others, insiders who knew the truth, began asking questions. If she sabotaged you, how come your numbers were tanking for months? For the first time, cracks appeared in his golden image. Tech blogs picked up the feud. Investors whispered about mismanagement, missed deadlines, arrogance. Ethan tried to spin, but the tide was shifting. And I didn't post a word. I didn't need to. The power struggle had begun. And for once, I wasn't playing defense. I was letting the truth, silent, patient, undeniable, do the work for me. News travels fast in a city like Columbus. Within weeks, Ethan's company was spiraling. The canceled contract I'd pulled out became public knowledge, and without it, the numbers cratered. His employees fled, investors stopped returning calls, and the tech blogs, once singing his praises, now dissected his arrogance with relish. And then my parents came knocking. I was in my office finalizing a deal with a biotech startup when my assistant buzzed me. "Your parents are here," she said, voice hesitant, as if she knew what storm was waiting outside my door. They looked older than I remembered. Mom's eyes were red. Dad's shoulders sagged in a way I'd never seen. Anna, Mom pleaded, wringing her hands. "You have to help him. He's lost everything." Dad's voice was softer but edged with command. "You've done well, Anna. But family comes first. Get him back on his feet." Family. The same family that had laughed when Ethan said I'd need 50 years to catch up. The same family that called me jealous when I revealed the truth. I leaned back in my chair, steady. I'm not responsible for him anymore. Mom's face crumpled. Dad's jaw tightened. They left with disappointment heavy in the air, as if I had broken some sacred oath. But I wasn't the one who had let Ethan fall. He had dug his own grave. That night my phone rang. Ethan's name lit up the screen. For a long moment I considered ignoring it. But curiosity won. His voice was rough, broken in a way I'd never heard. "Anna." "I'm sorry," he stammered. "I didn't know it was you who saved the company. I thought you were just trying to steal my spotlight." I closed my eyes. The memory of his smirk at Dad's party flashed in my mind, probably in 50 years. The laughter, the humiliation, the silence I had swallowed for decades. "I need your help," he whispered. "Just one last chance." For a long time, I said nothing. I could hear his breath hitching, the desperation clinging to every syllable. And then calmly I spoke. Wait 50 more years. Silence on the line. Then a click. I stared at my phone, my chest tight, but resolute. It wasn't joy. It wasn't revenge. It was something quieter, an echo finally returned to its sender. The fallout was swift. Ethan's company filed for bankruptcy within the month. His house went up for sale, the glossy suburban dream crumbling into foreclosure. The industry that once cheered his vision turned its back. His Instagram, once a daily shrine to his ego, went silent. And me, I kept building. My firm expanded, signing partnerships across the Midwest, then the coasts. I spoke at conferences quietly at first, then more openly, until my name became one people recognized not as Ethan's sister, but as a force of my own. Yet the echo lingered. At dinners, relatives shifted uncomfortably when Ethan's name came up. Some avoided me altogether, unable to reconcile the story they'd believed for years with the reality that had unfolded. My parents stopped boasting. They didn't apologize, but the silence around Ethan was its own admission. Sometimes late at night, I thought about the boy who once defended me on the school bleachers, telling cruel classmates to back off. I wondered if he was still in there somewhere, buried under ego and failure. But the man, he became the one who erased me, mocked me, lied to everyone we loved that man had to face his own ruin. The final confrontation wasn't loud, it wasn't dramatic. It was a quiet severing, a recognition that the brother I once knew no longer existed. And the echo, his own words thrown back at him, was all that remained between us. The night after my conversation with Ethan, I sat alone in my apartment's city lights, flickering outside my window. The silence was heavy, but it wasn't suffocating anymore. It was clarifying. For the first time in years, I wasn't thinking about how to keep someone else's dream alive. I was thinking about mine. For so long, my worth had been measured against Ethan's shadow. Every family dinner, every toast, every pointed question had carved me down until I believed I was the smaller sibling, the afterthought, the unfinished version of success. But sitting there now, I realized something simple. I had never been behind. I had just been unseen. And there's a difference. Behind means you're chasing. Unseen means you're already there, but no one bothered to look. When I pulled the plug on Ethan's company, I didn't do it for revenge. I did it because I refused to keep carrying the weight of his arrogance on my back. I had built something solid, something lasting, and I wasn't going to let my silence keep feeding his lie. The industry noticed. Within months, I was fielding calls from startups across the country. My firm grew from a small Columbus office to a multi-state operation. I wasn't chasing validation anymore. I was setting the terms. Investors asked for my insight. Founders sought my mentorship. For the first time, my name stood alone, not as Ethan's sister, not as the helper, but as Anna Bennett. Yet even in the glow of success, there were nights when memories surfaced. Ethan sneaking me cookie dough when Mom wasn't looking. Ethan standing up for me in middle school. The boy who promised we'd change the world together. Sometimes I grieved him, the version of my brother who once believed in me. But grief doesn't erase accountability. The man he became had made his choices, and I had made mine. When my parents came to me months later, asking again if I would reconsider helping Ethan rebuild, I gave them the same answer. Calm, steady, unwavering, no. Their disappointment no longer cut deep. It rolled off me like rain on stone. I didn't need their approval anymore. I had built my own measure of worth. Looking back, I understand now that silence can be both a prison and a weapon. For years, my silence kept me trapped, unseen and undervalued. But when I chose to wield it, when I stopped defending myself, stopped chasing applause, that same silence became my strength. It let the truth speak for itself. And Ethan, he became a cautionary tale. His fall wasn't my triumph, but it was proof lies and ego can only outrun reality for so long. The truth always catches up. I don't hate him. I don't even wish him pain. I pity him. Because arrogance gave him applause, but it cost him everything else: his company, his reputation, his family's faith. And when the noise faded, all he had left was silence. I still believe in building, in lifting others up. My firm funds dreamers who remind me of the girl I once was, quiet, underestimated, but burning with ideas no one else believed in. I tell them what I wish someone had told me: you don't need their spotlight. You already carry your own. As for me, I'm done chasing a seat at a table that was never set for me. I built my own table, and this time, no one gets to decide if I belong. The next time I hear someone say, "When will you catch up?" I'll smile, because I know the truth: I never had to. Have you ever been compared to a sibling or made to feel like the invisible one at your own family table? Have you ever carried a secret that could change the way they saw you forever? Would you stay silent, or would you reveal it? Share your story in the comments I'll be reading. And if this resonated with you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and stick around for more stories of resilience, betrayal, and quiet power. Remember, you're not behind. You're not invisible. You're just not where they expected you to be. And that is your greatest power.